Since the creation of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics of the early 1980s, TMNT has become a big part of pop culture, from multiple iterations of the cartoon, lots of feature-length films, as well as a heap of video games. A lot of these games have been hit or miss, especially in recent years, but Platinum Games has just come out with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants in Manhattan. The question is, though, is this game going to make you scream out cowabunga? Or should it just be turned into turtle soup? The storyline for the game takes place within its own TMNT world. The creators went through and played old SNES games, as well as watched the cartoons, and kind of came up with their own concept for that TMNT universe. The characters, design-wise, are a bit different than what we're particularly used to, but pretty much every iteration of TMNT has changed the designs at least one way or another. Some of the designs I liked, and other ones were a bit more questionable. But either way, it gave the game itself a bit of a unique feel. The actual story included is pretty typical TMNT fare. Without going into too much spoiler territory, basically Shredder and Krang are teaming up in order to open up a dimensional hole so that they can then invade Earth. There are a bunch of other villains that are thrown into the mix, and they do have a purpose for why they're doing their particular things, but overall it's a pretty generic story. It does get the job done and gives you a reason for going from stage to stage and has an eventual conclusion, but overall it's nothing really new for the TMNT world. Like many games that feature the TMNT license, Mutants in Manhattan is a hack and slash, something that Platinum Games, the creator, are a specialist in, creating the Bayonetta series, as well as doing other licensed games for The Legend of Korra, and most recently Transformers Devastation. Mutants in Manhattan is very typical hack and slash with weak and strong attacks that you can combo in order to destroy enemies. You destroy a small group of enemies, then move on for a little bit of the level, and then destroy another group of enemies, and rinse and repeat until eventually you make it to the boss's lair and defeat the boss, and then move on to the next stage. You'll have special moves that you can get throughout the game that you can actually upgrade via points that you earn after completing a group battle. There is a few times where the game will deviate a little bit. You'll be able to roll money bags by actually jumping on them and rolling them to goals, or picking up giant gold bars and delivering them to other locations. And sometimes you may even have to defuse a time bomb or two. Immediately, memories of the old TMNT NES Dam came to mind, but trust me, there's nothing as difficult as that in this game. Thankfully, in Mutants in Manhattan, you can play as any of the 4 Ninja Turtles. Unfortunately, there isn't any unlockable extra characters that you can end up getting to add to the mix, but the 4 Turtles are represented, and you can actually switch at any time during the course of a level. You just hold down the L2 button and then press a D-pad direction, and you'll change into a different turtle. Each turtle will have its own health bar, and once a turtle is defeated, they'll go into kind of a shell mode, where they can move around for a certain number of seconds, but if that seconds run out, they end up dying and be taken off of the current map. They then go back to the lair where they can eat pizza, and after a certain amount of pizza has been eaten and their health has been refilled, they rejoin the battle. If all 4 of your turtles end up in the lair eating pizza, though, it is game over and you'll have to use a continue, and after you've run out of continues, it will be game over and you'll have to start the level all over from the beginning. During the shell mode, you can be revived by your teammates. Hopefully, you don't have to rely too much on the AI in the game, but we'll get into more of that later. To aid into the mix of just your normal attacks, there are a few special items that you can get in order to help you out as well, including pizzas, small slices, and full pizzas that will restore a certain amount of health. You'll have drinks that will either allow you to jump higher or be faster for a period of time. You'll also get flat-out weapons like bombs, different types, like ones that will blow up and cause tacks to go on the ground and enemies will walk on them. You'll even get plantable landmines. You'll get smoke bombs, ice bombs, and even a few different types of turrets, some of which will be automatic and attack your enemy, and another type where you can actually get on the turret and actually fire at your enemy until it runs out of ammo. The levels in the game start off strong, with a city-like environment that's a bit more open and more space for you to traverse. You'll have your set objectives that you have to do: find the enemies, destroy the enemies, or find a runaway car, destroy that, and then continue on, and eventually after destroying enough things, you'll open up the door to the boss. But the level itself features a lot of buildings that you can actually climb on, railings that you can slide on, wires that you can grab and move across. Unfortunately though, this level and maybe one other later on are the only levels that really feel like a bigger open area. Yes, it is a hack and slash, but this opening level teased me that more of the game was going to be more exploration. Once you jump into level 2 though, you're in a subway, and then a sewer, and then another sewer, and then eventually an office building, which is pretty confined in itself as well. There's a little bit of exploration when it comes to the game's collectibles, as you can collect 50 different comics featuring cover art from the original set of TMNT comics, which is definitely a cool collectible. But outside of that, you're not going to be doing a whole lot of extra exploration. However, when it comes to hack and slash, the game's only as fun as it is to hack and slash, and Mutants in Manhattan is just okay. A lot of button mashing, not a lot of elaborate combos. A lot of it will be you button mashing the square or triangle button real quick and then holding down L2 to try to pull off one of your ninjutsus. Every turtle can have 4 of the ninjutsus equipped at a given time, and each turtle can actually equip the same ones if you wanted them to. And there is a good variety here, I will say that, some of which are buffs like invincibility or powering back up all the special ninjutsu moves or healing your various allies. There's also plenty that are straight up just normal straight attacks against a singular enemy, and then ones that will clear out a much bigger space. Testing out and trying out all the various ninjutsus is definitely one of the funner aspects, especially as you get more experience points and thus can level up these particular ninjutsu moves. There's also plenty of them that are locked behind certain requirements, like defeat a certain number of enemies, or reach a certain experience level, or even defeat a certain boss. Speaking of the bosses, these are the highlight for this game. If you bump the difficulty up on the boss fights, you are going to have yourself quite a challenge. In fact, for the hardcore hack and slash fans, I recommend boosting up the difficulty right away, as you'll probably find yourself in a bit of a tight spot here and there when battling the various bosses. You'll have a whole bunch of ones from classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore, like, of course, Shredder and Krang, Bebop and Rocksteady, as well as a personal favorite from the past for me, Wingnut, though Screwloose doesn't end up making an appearance. The bosses are quite large, they have various different moves that you're going to have to figure out the best way in order to avoid. The game does feature a block and counter system as well, using the R2 button. Using it too much will cause your turtle to get dizzy, allowing your opponent to easily do some damage to you. But if you time it right, you'll be able to pull off a counter move. Pulling it off perfectly will allow you to press the circle button right after doing the R2, and you'll be able to jump on the back of one of your enemies and keep them at bay while your allies just beat the crap out of them for a lot of extra damage. Some of these bosses though are quite the damage sponges, and it takes quite a lot of hits in order to defeat them. Depending upon what difficulty you're on though, the bosses will actually have more health. And on the highest difficulty, some bosses will actually change up altogether. So it's worth it to kind of master the game and play the game on the harder settings. Sometimes even objectives in the main levels will also be different when playing through on various difficulties. So there is some replayability when it comes to playing the game on easy, normal, hard, and very hard. One of the best aspects of a lot of Ninja Turtles games is co-op or multiplayer, and the game does feature it, but only online. You can play with up to 3 other players on the online mode, play through all of the same stages, all of the difficulties are available to you, and you will gain experience to level up your turtles that you can then continue to use online, or jump back into single player and use that more powerful turtle in order to clear the higher difficulties with. There is no same system co-op, which is a huge disappointment for me. I know there's not a lot of need for it, and not as many gamers are into same system multiplayer anymore, but come on, it's Turtles. So many grew up with it from the past that they probably would expect at least a 2-player option. Maybe not get all the way up to the 4-player here on the same system, but I definitely think 2-player co-op on the same system would definitely have been doable. The online itself though does work pretty well. I was able to easily find a few matchups, though there isn't a lot of people playing it. I guess that goes to show how many people have gone ahead and picked it up so far. But either way, I was able to get into a matchup. You can actually search for particular stages and particular difficulties and have your selected default turtle that it will try to give you. But of course, more than likely, any matchup you're going to get, your favorite's already taken, so you're going to have to play as one of the other turtles. But either way, once I was into a match, I wasn't featuring really any lag. I didn't get kicked out of any of the particular missions I ended up doing. But it's still basically the same single player, just online, of course. The thing is, though, I actually highly recommend you play the game online with some friends. If you're buying the game to play single player only, you're probably going to have a lot less fun with it than if you end up getting a group of friends together in order to play through the game's main story. The main reason for this is the AI. Sometimes the AI works fine. It's okay. But then there are plenty of times where it is absolutely atrocious. Not healing me where clearly I should be the priority and actually attempt to heal me instead of running around in a circle. There's also times during levels where they got flat out stuck, either behind the wall, on a ledge, and weren't able to help me out. One particular occurrence is you have to move these big bomb-like objects, and you need 2 turtles in order to get close to it, and it will attach to you, and then you kind of move it together in order to get to the goal. Trying to do this with the AI partners was a nightmare. So many times they lagged so far behind it would disconnect and I would have to run backwards and get the bomb and then continue on. Trying to climb buildings with them with the same exact object was near impossible until eventually I just slowly crawled my way up a building so that they could finally keep up with me enough. Other times, I'd be in the middle of a battle, look around me, and none of my AI partners were actually with me. They were stuck somewhere else or falling into a hole repeatedly. I don't know if I just got extremely unlucky when it came to the AI, but there was a lot of times where I was just scratching my head at what the heck they were actually trying to do. One boss in particular is an airborne boss, and because of this, the AI was unable to really help me out at all and do any damage to the boss. They stood on the ground level and just kept attacking underneath of him, where he floated overhead, and they were unable to do really anything, making the battle a heck of a lot tougher than it actually needed to be. You do get the option to command your AI partners. You can tell them to go all out, to follow you, to stay put, or to protect you. No matter what options I ended up picking half the time, once it came to battle, they just did whatever the heck they wanted and weren't listening to me whatsoever. If I told them to protect me and I would run away from a boss so I could kind of refill my ninjutsu moves, they just stayed in and fought them and ended up getting hit and killed, and then I would try to heal them and I ended up getting killed as well. Nothing's quite as frustrating as bad AI that ends up causing you to lose a fight you could have easily won. While the game kept a decent frame rate and didn't crash on me during any point of my gameplay, I did run into some issues with the camera. Playing through the game's 9 main story levels on normal difficulty single player took me about 5.5 hours. There was one time where I ended up completely wiping and had to redo a stage from the beginning, but that was only the one time, and it still, even with that, would have taken me 5 hours in order to complete it. I've heard some complaining that it was even less than that, but I'm sure if you play it on easy or you play it online multiplayer with some competent actual human people playing instead of the abysmal AI, it may take you a little bit less time, but still a relatively short experience, though the added difficulties will give me some replayability, especially considering there's some hidden secret bosses as well in the game that you can only get on the higher difficulties. Overall, Mutants in Manhattan is far from the worst hack and slash I've ever played, and far from the worst TMNT game I've ever played. But being a big fan of the series and big fan of Platinum Games' previous efforts, I was expecting a bit more here. I love that they took their own twist on things, but the level design was just kinda ugh. Especially doing multiple levels of a sewer. There's a level that's just a boss rush for the most part, as well as areas that felt the exact same. In fact, I think certain rooms were actually identical to the previous rooms I had already completed. Some levels just felt a bit lazy overall with their design. Factor in the bad AI when you're playing through it on single player and just the game's overall shortness. It just left me feeling disappointed. Mutants in Manhattan is available for PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC Steam. It's $49.99, which is just way overpriced for what you end up getting here. I'm going to end up blaming Activision for the price on the game. I feel like if they had actually priced it more like they did with Legend of Korra, another Platinum Games licensed Nickelodeon game, I feel like it would have been a much better value, and actually I could recommend it to some people, but as it is right now, just wait for it to hit the bargain bin before you decide to pick it up. Even if you're a hardcore TMNT fan, trust me, it's just not worth it. I'm going to be giving TMNT Mutants in Manhattan a 4 out of 10. It just needed some more stages, better AI, or a little bit more variety to the level designs and objectives, and maybe it could have gotten a higher score. But either way, that will wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.